let's look at Gobsprakk's damage, shall we? I was running some numbers earlier. Thanks all my patrons, buy some dice, Wiberian makes good art. You know the drill. Okay, so here is Gobsprakk. Let's have just a quick look at his war scroll. So he's got these anti-wizard weapons, right? His like little staff, 3 attacks, force and 3s, no rend, d3 damage with anti-wizard +1 rend. And he's got that crit mortals on his demon finger staff. Then the actual bird itself, Killabeak's talons and beak, 7 attacks, 4s and 2s with 1 rend and 2 damage. And again, he's got this anti-wizard +1 rend, but this Killabeak also has companion. So this profile here, the 7 dice, this is where the bulk of his damage is going to be coming from when we think about Gobsprakk. And then he has a Killabeak's Stinger, which is 1 attacks, 3s and 2s, 1 rend, d6 damage with crit mortals and companion. So the Killabeak's Stinger, I'll show you here in a minute, but I've kind of not included the damage in some of his attack profiles because it's so swingy that it's unreliable, right? Like when you have 7 attacks with 4s and 2s, it's like, okay, but 1 attack, 3s and 2s, it's like, I'm going to give you a die, and I'm going to say, you get to roll this 3 times, right, to hit 2 wound and damage, but don't roll a 1. If you roll a 1 any of those 3 times, you've failed, right? So it's like, here's a die, roll 3 times, don't, like, it's just not good. Sometimes this crit mortal will go off, and you'll get 6 damage, and it's like, fantastic. But when you're playing the game, and when you're thinking about, like, where to move him and when to engage him, you're just going to pretend that this stinger doesn't exist, right? And then there's no other like combat damage that he has on his war scroll, right? He's got a Screaming Mandrake. Mork says no, his war scroll spell. And then he's got this like Crush to Death, right? Pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target, roll a die. If the roll exceeds the target's health characteristic, 1 model of the target unit is slain. So this is his rampage. He's going to kill like 1 or 2 health characteristic models, but that's fine, but we'll see. I'll kind of give you a better idea about what he's actually going to do. I wish he was faster. Okay, so here on the far left, we have just Gobsprakk straight up damage. So against a 4-up save, he's dealing about 7.11 damage. Now, this includes the Stinger, and so without the Stinger, right? Without the Stinger, what you're sort of expecting Gobsprakk to do is about 5 damage. When you think about Gobsprakk going into a non-wizard enemy, right? You think 5 damage. That's what he's gonna do. So he might actually be be useful to clean up like a unit, right? Like if you're gonna throw like Lethal Surprise, for example, at an opponent, let me just pull up if you're gonna throw Lethal Surprise at an opponent, Gobsprakk will actually be oh sorry, I meant Noisy Racket. If you give your opponent strike last, right, Gobsprakk can sort of throw in 5 more damage if that's your plan. If you're like, okay, you know, my Gut Rippers are going to fight this unit, and then Gobsprack's going to come in this turn for the second round of combat. I'm going to try to give strike last so that Gobsprakk can sort of add his 5 damage. That's going to be a role that he plays, right, being like the 3rd, 4th unit into the scrum, right? When we give him Venom Encrusted Weapons, his damage goes up a little bit, but not very much, because he doesn't really have, like, Crit Mortals isn't on his actual good attack, right? He has crit Mortals on his Demon Finger Staff, which only has 3 dice, and he also has Crit Mortals on his Killabeak Stinger, but again, I try not to think too much about the Stinger because it's unreliable. So Venom Encrusted Weapons is actually quite a weak buff. Overall, like we're adding less than 1 damage overall if we're including the Stinger, like on average. So, you know, you're not going to be picking him for this, for Venom Encrusted Weapons. And his Versus Wizard, right? This is the +1 rend on a couple of his attacks. On his good attack and on his Demon Finger Staff, which is still like, you know, like it's something. So if we actually get that rend against wizards, we're now dealing like 8.3 damage, or if we exclude the Stinger, 6.75 damage. So no Stinger versus wizards, you know, we're actually dealing enough damage to relatively reliably, I mean, you know, like it's pretty tight to kill a wizard. If we were to look at, for example, a Weird Knob Shaman, if we were going to look at a picture of a Weird Knob Shaman, in Age of Sigmar 4, we could see that it's enough to kill our weird Knob Shaman. Right? 6 save, 6 health. Well, Gobsprakk with no stinger, no mortal wounds, like no buffs at all against a 6 of health is going to deal enough damage to kill a weird Knob. So, you know, against foot heroes, I think Gobsprack's going to be okay in combat. But outside of that, like, 5 damage. 5 damage. He's going to kill some little foot hero with a bad save. Right? Some little foot wizard with a bad save. But outside of that, 5 damage. If you give him venom encrusted weapons and you give him, and it's a wizard, you know, and it's a terrible save, he can push up to 10 damage. But, like, Gobsprakk is not going to fight for us. He's not going to be fighty. So again, when you're thinking about Gobsprakk and you're planning your plays and you're thinking about if you want to include him in your list, and when we do finally get to see a kill boss on Vulture, just keep in mind Gobsprakk deals 5 damage. Like, subscribe, wah.